Maria wiped the perspiration from her forehead as she climbed the 3 flights of stairs to apartment 4B, her arms laden with grocery bags and cleaning supplies. At 62, these daily visits were becoming more challenging, but she couldn't abandon Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, not when the elderly woman had no one else. The paint was peeling in the narrow hallway, and the carpet had seen better decades. This wasn't the kind of neighborhood where millionaires lived, Maria thought, fumbling for her key. Mrs. Whitman had given it to her 6 months ago when her arthritis made it difficult to get to the door quickly. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitman," Maria called out as she entered the small, tiny apartment. The furniture was worn but well maintained, and everything had its place. Doilies covered the arms of the faded floral sofa, and photographs in mismatched frames lined the mantelpiece of the non-working fireplace. "Oh, Maria, dear, you didn't need to bring so much," Eleanor said, shuffling from her bedroom in her worn slippers and housecoat. At 86, she moved slowly but maintained her dignity with perfect posture and carefully styled silver hair. "Nonsense," Maria replied, unpacking the groceries. "I got those butter cookies you like, and the pharmacist said your prescription will be ready this afternoon." She didn't mention that she'd paid for the groceries with her own money again. Her job cleaning office buildings at night barely covered her own expenses, but Eleanor's Social Security check never seemed to stretch far enough. Eleanor settled into her favorite armchair, the one by the window where she could watch the children walk to school. "You're too good to me, dear. I don't know what I did to deserve such kindness." Maria had been asking herself the same question for months. She'd met Eleanor at the community clinic where Maria was having her blood pressure checked. The elderly woman was sitting alone, looking confused about the paperwork, and Maria had offered to help. That simple act had evolved into daily visits, grocery runs, and eventually becoming Eleanor's primary caregiver. "Did you take your medications this morning?" Maria asked, checking the pill organizer she'd bought and filled each week. "Yes, dear. All of them." Eleanor's voice carried a sadness that Maria had grown accustomed to. The woman rarely spoke about her past, but Maria gathered she'd had a son who lived far away. There was one photograph on the mantel of a young man in a graduation cap and gown, but Eleanor never mentioned him. As Maria began her routine of light housework, Eleanor spoke quietly. "I had a dream about my son again last night." Maria paused in her dusting. Eleanor rarely mentioned her son, and when she did, it was always with a mixture of pride and profound sadness. "He was such a bright boy," Eleanor continued, gazing out the window. "Always building things, taking apart radios and putting them back together. I used to worry he'd electrocute himself." She laughed softly at the memory. "He got a full scholarship to MIT, you know. I was so proud." "What happened?" Maria asked gently, settling into the chair across from Eleanor. "Life happened," Eleanor replied with a sigh. "He graduated, got a job with some big company in California. Said he was going to change the world with computers. I didn't understand it then, still don't, really." She twisted her wedding ring, a habit Maria noticed when Eleanor was particularly melancholy. "He called less and less. Said he was busy, working long hours. Then he got married to some woman who didn't think much of his small-town mother." Maria felt her heart ache for the woman. She'd seen this story too many times: successful children who outgrew their humble beginnings and the parents who'd sacrificed everything for them. "The last time we spoke was 15 years ago," Eleanor whispered. "He called to tell me about his promotion to some executive position. I tried to tell him about your father's funeral, my husband, his stepfather who raised him, but he said he had to go to a meeting. Tears gathered in Eleanor's eyes. I haven't heard from him since. Maria reached over and squeezed Eleanor's hand. I'm sure he thinks about you. Maybe, Eleanor said doubtfully. But thinking doesn't pay for groceries or help with doctor visits, does it? That afternoon, while Eleanor napped, Maria sat at the small kitchen table and went through the bills. The stack seemed to grow each week. The rent was 2 months behind, utilities were overdue, and there were medical bills from Eleanor's recent hospital stay that would take years to pay off on her fixed income. Maria opened her own purse and counted the cash she had left from her last paycheck. After her own rent and basic expenses, there wasn't much, but it would cover Eleanor's electric bill this month. She'd figure out the rest later. The next few weeks followed the same pattern. Maria worked her night shift, slept a few hours, then spent her days caring for Eleanor. She helped with bathing, prepared meals, managed medications, and provided the companionship that the isolated woman desperately needed. You know, Eleanor said one afternoon as they sat together working on a jigsaw puzzle, I never told you about the letters I used to write. Letters? To my son. Every month for years, I'd write him a letter telling him about my life, asking about his. I'd address them to his company. It's called Whitman Technologies now. Can you believe that? He named it after our family. She smiled sadly. I'd write them, seal them, stamp them, and then I'd throw them away. Why? Maria asked, though she thought she understood. Pride, I suppose. And fear. What if he didn't want to hear from me? What if he'd moved on completely? Eleanor picked up a puzzle piece and examined it carefully. Sometimes I wonder if I made a mistake. If I should have tried harder. Maria wanted to encourage her to reach out, but she also understood the fear of rejection. It's never too late, she said quietly. Eleanor looked at her with eyes full of unshed tears. Oh, my dear, I think it is. Some bridges burn completely, and you can't rebuild them. That evening, as Maria cleaned the downtown office building where she worked, she couldn't stop thinking about Eleanor's story. She found herself in front of a computer in one of the executive offices, and on impulse, she typed Whitman Technologies into the search engine. The results made her gasp. Whitman Technologies was a major software company with offices worldwide. The CEO and founder was David Whitman, and his photograph showed a distinguished man in his 50s with Eleanor's same intelligent eyes and stubborn chin. Maria scrolled through article after article about the company's success, David Whitman's innovations, his philanthropic work, and his estimated net worth of over $50 million. There were photos of him at charity galas, business conferences, and award ceremonies, always impeccably dressed and confident. But what struck Maria most was a recent interview where he spoke about his company's mission to use technology to help elderly people age in place with dignity. The irony was heartbreaking. Over the following days, Maria wrestled with what she'd learned. Should she tell Eleanor that her son was not just successful but extraordinarily wealthy? Should she try to contact him herself? The moral complexity of the situation weighed heavily on her mind. Eleanor's health began to decline more noticeably. She was forgetting to eat, having trouble managing her medications even with Maria's help, and her mobility was decreasing. The small apartment that had been adequate was becoming a challenge to navigate. I think I need to go to one of those places, Eleanor said one morning, her voice filled with defeat. You know, where old people go to die. Don't talk like that, Maria said firmly, though she'd been having the same thoughts. Eleanor needed more care than Maria could provide while working full-time. "I've been looking at brochures," Eleanor continued, pointing to a stack of literature from various nursing facilities. "I can afford about 6 months at the county place before I run out of money completely." Maria looked at the brochure for the county nursing home. She'd visited friends there before. It was clean and the staff was caring, but it was overcrowded and understaffed. Eleanor would be safe but lonely, just another elderly person waiting to die. That night, Maria made a decision that would change everything. She composed an email to David Whitman at Whitman Technologies, not sure if it would ever reach him but knowing she had to try. "Dear Mr. Whitman," she wrote. "You don't know me, but I've been caring for your mother, Eleanor Whitman, for the past year. She lives alone in a small apartment downtown and struggles daily with health issues and financial hardship. She speaks of you often with great pride and love, though she believes you've forgotten her. I thought you should know that she needs help, and I thought you should know that despite everything, she loves you unconditionally. If you have any compassion for the woman who raised you and sacrificed everything for your success, please contact her. Time is running out." She hesitated for a long moment before hitting send, then immediately worried she'd overstepped her bounds. But as she thought of Eleanor's sad eyes and defeated posture, she knew she'd done the right thing. 3 days later, Maria arrived at Eleanor's apartment to find the elderly woman sitting by the window, crying softly while holding her phone. "Mrs. Whitman? What's wrong?" Maria rushed to her side. "He called," Eleanor whispered. "My son called. After 15 years of silence, he called." She looked up at Maria with wonder in her eyes. "He's coming to see me today. He said he's been trying to find me for months, that he lost touch when I moved from the old house." Maria's heart raced. "How wonderful. You must be so excited." "Terrified is more like it," Eleanor admitted. "What if he's disappointed in how I live? What if he thinks less of me?" "He could never think less of you," Maria assured her, though she privately wondered how David Whitman would react to his mother's circumstances. That afternoon, Maria was helping Eleanor get dressed in her best outfit when there was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, she saw a tall man in an expensive suit holding flowers. Eleanor's hand shook as she opened the door. "David?" "Hello, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. The successful executive facade cracked as he took in his mother's small apartment and frail appearance. "I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry." They embraced, and Maria quietly slipped toward the door to give them privacy, but Eleanor caught her hand. "David, this is Maria. She's been my angel." Eleanor's voice broke. "She's taken care of me when no one else would." David turned to Maria, and she saw tears in his eyes. "You sent the email?" Maria nodded, suddenly nervous. "I hope I didn't overstep." "Overstep?" David's voice was incredulous. "You gave me back my mother. I've been trying to find her for over a year. She moved from the old house, and I couldn't locate her. I hired private investigators, but..." He trailed off, looking around the modest apartment. "I wanted to be independent," Eleanor said quietly. "After your father died, the house was too big, too expensive. I sold it and moved here. I didn't think you'd want to know." "Mom, I never stopped wanting to know. I got lost somewhere along the way. Success became more important than family, and by the time I realized what I'd lost, I thought it was too late." Over the next several hours, Maria watched as mother and son rebuilt their relationship. David explained how his company's success had initially driven them apart. He'd been so focused on proving himself that he'd neglected the relationships that mattered most. His marriage had failed partly because his wife had demanded he cut ties with his embarrassing background, and he'd been too proud and ambitious to stand up for his mother. "I've spent the last 5 years in therapy, trying to understand how I became someone I didn't recognize," he told Eleanor. "When my marriage ended, I realized that all the money and success meant nothing without family." Eleanor listened with wonder as her son described his attempts to find her, his regret over their lost years, and his desire to make amends. "The company's mission to help elderly people that was inspired by you, Mom. By my guilt over abandoning you and my hope that somehow, I could help other families stay connected." As the afternoon wore on, David learned about Eleanor's struggles, her medical needs, and her financial situation. His face grew increasingly distressed as he realized how his mother had been living while he'd been accumulating wealth. "This ends now," he said firmly. "Mom, you're never going to worry about money again. And Maria," he turned to her with profound gratitude, "I can never repay what you've done, but I'd like to try." Maria shook her head. "I didn't do it for payment. I did it because she needed help, and I cared about her. Which is exactly why you deserve everything I want to give you," David replied. Within a month, Eleanor was living in a beautiful assisted living facility where she had her own spacious apartment, round-the-clock medical care, and daily visits from her son. David had insisted on paying for the best possible care while ensuring his mother maintained her independence and dignity.